It's The World This Week. The World This Week in partnership with The Daily Beast. Craig Kopitas is contributing editor to The Daily Beast. How are you, sir?
Enjoying the costume drama in the UK.
All right, well, we'll talk about it in a moment.
I'm really looking forward.
Hold your fire. With us as well, we say hello to Ulrike Koltermann, journalist at the French news agency AFP.
Guten Abend for the German service of AFP.
Guten Abend to you as well. Catherine Field, Europe correspondent for New Zealand Media and Entertainment. How are things?
Kia ora, as we're being local.
Okay, all right. And Philippe Moreau-Chevalier, columnist
Hi.
and communications consultant. An English language. Hi, I like that. Thank you, sir.
I'm trying my best.
All right. The World This Week, where, by the way, you can listen and like on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other fine streaming services. 10 days, not enough to bid farewell to a queen that reigned for 70 years. And when the lines for the public to enter Westminster Hall extended across the Thames to an 11-hour wait on Friday, well, the Queen's lying in state official YouTube channel forced her to announce a suspension. The lines have since resumed, with authorities saying there's a 24-hour wait for the young and old, near and far. It's a wait that's worth it.
In 3-4 hours or so that we've been in this queue, and we've powered through it.
We don't regret any minute of it, do we? And we've got another 2 hours to go, apparently, but we'll do it.
No sensation on my knees at all, or legs. But it's been fine.
There was a part up there where the traffic had stopped for an hour and a half, but there was people singing, and generally people just get on with it, deal with it. We're good at queuing. Very good at queuing.
Very good at queuing, Catherine Field. Indeed, better than the French would be, probably. But you and I just back from London, and what's amazing is that it's actually those people, the ones waiting online, that are the story.
They really are, because this is someone who has been a part of our lives, whether you agree with the monarchy or not. She's been a part of people's lives for so long. I mean, for us, all our lives. She's been on the throne all our lives. She's been a guidance when it's come to times of war, times of great upheaval, times of joy, or what we thought were joy when Charles and Diana got married. So, yeah, it is. People are also starting to realize that this is the end of the 20th century. We're having people like Mikhail Gorbachev die, right? The Queen Elizabeth II is dead. All these people that were so much a part of the 20th century, and they're all dying.
Is that what it's about, Ulrike Koltermann? That this monarch, 96 years old, people thought she was immortal, and now she's not?
I think, first of all, it was such a show of Britishness. It was just interesting to watch how people react. And it will take some time. It's like a human desire for sense, for a mother figure, for heroes, for female heroes, and also curiosity to be there at an historic moment. But I think after a while there are more serious questions coming up, like, do they really need a monarchy? Do they really need a King Charles III, or maybe the last? Who knows?
We'll talk about that, King Charles the Last. Craig Kopitas, a lot of those people who first laid flowers at Buckingham Palace and are now waiting online from working class backgrounds, areas that have been hit hard in the UK the last few years, where there's a lot of political divisiveness, which is uncharacteristic when you think of Britain. And yet, for them, this unifying moment matters so much.
Well, you know, what we all at this table do in great part is report on extraordinary popular delusions and the madness of crowds. And insanity is contagious. And God bless the British, because they venerate, if not outright, worship.
Is it insanity to want a national unity, to identify with an institution that's supposed to represent unity at a time of disunity?
As an American, I find the monarchy ridiculous, but it's not my monarchy. But look, the United Kingdom of Great Brexit and Northern Ireland doesn't excel at much these days except costume drama, and they do it very well. It's a business. They've exported it. But I think one thing we have to point out here among all the hubbub, this is not going to win King Charles any votes.
But he doesn't need me.
That's my point. And the second thing is, when we watch all these luminaries going into Westminster Cathedral saying biggest gathering, I can guarantee you that the Queen never met the King. And there were more people in Graceland for his funeral. 30,000 were in Graceland for Elvis's funeral when he died in, when was it, 77.
1977.
So, and they never met. The Queen never met the King.
By next Monday, there will be many more than 30,000 people who will have filed past the Queen's coffin at Westminster.
Yeah, first of all, I'm amazed you would know the date, the exact date of the death of the King, Elvis Presley, because I didn't know it myself, so congratulations on that. The Queen was the greatest communicator of all. I mean, she could embody the monarchy, and there is something that every politicians today miss dramatically, especially in the US, if I may say. It's the notion that you have to put your personal desires way behind the duty that you inherit from the state. And that she was embodying the notion of sacrifice, because this woman didn't have any personal desire, didn't express any for like all of her career as a queen. All of her life was dedicated to the state. And that's something that people need desperately now, and we don't find politicians capable of embodying that, apart maybe from Angela Merkel.
You're a royalist, mon cher. You are a royalist.
No, I'm French. We love monarchies outside of our borders.
That's not what King Louis told me.
Right.
Outside of all borders.
One of the most quoted lines of this week is, a monarch's role is not to do, but to be.
Yeah.
So following up from what Philippe just said, can Charles, if I put this bluntly, keep his mouth shut as king?
Well, I think he can, and I'll tell you why. Following on from what Philippe was saying, unlike the Queen, where we never knew what the Queen thought of anything, she would keep a pot face, she never got involved in television interviews, newspaper interviews. Charles has. So this is the first monarch that Great Britain and the Commonwealth have had that we know what he thinks. We know precisely what he thinks about the environment, about agriculture, about architecture. So he has already said in his speech, if you recall, his first speech he made, he said, I will now abide by what the Constitution says, which is I won't make any political remarks. He doesn't need to. He's been around for 70-something years. So all his lieutenants are in place. All the people that he's worked with on ecology are in place. They will be pursuing what he has been promoting for the last 40 or so years.
I think there's a positive point. Yes, he's an environmentalist, and that's great. And he discovered ecological issues way before other people, which is great. But, I mean, this is mainstream now. We don't need one more king who is also interested in climate change and ecological affairs, because it's really mainstream.
It's mainstream
why
in Europe.
Do we need King Charles to also
it's
talk about it?
mainstream in Europe, but it's not in Britain. If you look at some of the policies of Liz Truss and her government at the moment.
But then he has no executive power. So,
but he has people who can.
Well, the question.
But this is the trap. It seems mainstream to a German, but as was just stated.
As John Lennon said, Her Majesty's a pretty nice girl, but she doesn't have a lot to say. Or maybe it was McCartney. But the point of it being is King Charles has a lot to say, and no one's going to let him say it. And that's because, as you pointed out, it's basically a family business. There is a symbiotic relationship between Fleet Street and the media and the monarchy. They make money off of it.
Does the problem come then from Republicans like Ulrika here? Or does the problem come more from his right flank, from those that Catherine Field was talking about?
Well, it's going to come from the right, because I don't think your king is going to be able to keep his mouth shut, and I don't think he should, given what you're saying, the importance of these. I'm not going to say anything about England. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, does that mean I can't say there's a tidal wave coming to engulf the country and we can do something to save this? He's really in a tricky situation.
But
I don't think he is.
Point.
No, he's not in a tricky situation, because you've got Prince William coming along. And Prince William, who's just turned 40, has been making a lot of statements about homelessness, about environment, about a one community. People feel.
Does he pay tax, by the way?
Charles does.
He does. So he's going to have to pay that 40% income tax, inheritance tax in England. Is that what? I'm just asking. I mean, the family's worth what, $2-3 billion?
The devil's in the detail. Here in Republican France, by the way, they're also paying tribute. The local airport in President Macron's home constituency of Le Touquet, that's on the North Sea, renamed in honor of the late Queen Elizabeth. You were kind of saying it tongue-in-cheek, Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, about the French loving the monarchy, but it's actually true. Huh?
Yes, we love the monarchy, again, outside of our borders. We love the idea of a monarchy. We love the concept.
And we love a Palais d'Élysée.
Yeah, we love the
attributes.
attributes. We love the attributes of it. We love to see a president inside a big, house, a palace. We don't want to have kings per se. We love the feeling of it, but not the reality of it. And the reality of what we think is that we kill our monarchs on a regular basis. And Macron is unpopular. Is popular the day of his election, and then unpopular the very next day. Right. Then everyone wants to kill him.
We kill him figuratively.
Yeah, of course, not literally. Stop doing that.
The other huge story of the week: Moscow's trading partners have some questions. Vladimir Putin jetting over to Uzbekistan for a regional security summit that seems sure to break that narrative of growing international isolation. Instead, the Russian president surprising many when he conceded that his Chinese counterpart on Thursday had some serious doubts about his Ukraine campaign.
We highly value the balanced position of our Chinese friends when it comes to the Ukraine crisis. We understand your questions and concern about this.
And there's more, Catherine Field. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, this Friday, saying now's not the time for war. And he says it publicly in front of Vladimir Putin.
Indeed, it's been a bad week for Vladimir Putin. Not only has there been the reverses on the battlefield in Ukraine, but also what was meant to be a meeting with chums, with brothers, India, China. They've all said, we don't like war. And China and India do not like war. This is not the way they usually solve disputes. China particularly doesn't like having any sort of unrest. China is still recovering from that fatal Sino-Vietnamese war. They don't do wars. They prefer to have their influence by economic and social measures. But it certainly would have been a real shot in the eye for Vladimir Putin just at the time when he's economically and militarily on the back foot.
Ulrike Koltermann.
It was a very strong image what we just saw. The flower arrangement looked like a coffin in between them. I think that says a lot about their relationship. In February, they met just before the invasion, and they were best friends. And then it turned out that the best friend is not is quite isolated. So they don't ditch him totally, but you feel more and more distance. So Putin really gets in a very difficult situation. But that also makes him more dangerous.
It's incredible because in the build-up to this summit, a lot of articles, a lot of headlines here in the West were saying, oh, China's going all in. It's the new axis, Beijing and Moscow. And of course, it's a different story that's emerging.
Right. Well, remember, never eat at a place called Mom's, never play cards with a man named Doc, and never, ever look at Russia through a Western prism, because that's what's been going on since February 27th. This war is going to go on for quite some time.
And the Chinese don't like it.
Yeah, well, too bad. Putin does not care. He has the money. He has the money. The Americans thought he was going to be bankrupt by now. They just released something that said, oh, maybe 4% down. They were hoping for 14. He's got the money to continue this war. He's going to see what happens during the winter, okay? Trying to blackmail, freeze us into convincing Zelensky to capitulate. And then what happens come springtime? He's going to enter Dante's 8th circle of hell. Right now, what he's doing to the Ukrainians is just simply third circle of hell ghoulish. And then it's going to get really bad.
On the other hand, Ukraine had made big gains now, and I think that shows...
Big gains mean nothing when you bring in the Air Force.
It means that the weapons that are delivered to Ukraine are working, and the Ukrainians have adapted to them, because there was a lot of talk that they can't use Western weapons. Obviously, they can't, and they're making gains with it. So there is progress.
No, I'm sorry. I won't let that pass. The Kremlin and Putin have yet to unleash the hounds of hell. The weapons they have now mostly...
What are the hounds of hell?
The hounds of hell...
They can't do it.
The hounds of hell in this instance is weaponry, airborne weaponry, that comes in above 5,000 meters, which is the ceiling of the current weapons they have. If they start bringing in the backfire bombers and sophisticated jets that they're talking about that you hear every night on Russian TV.
Look at their
There's
army.
no
Look
defense
at the state
against
of their
that.
army. It's not. I mean, the soldiers, the Russian troops, they are demoralized, and Putin cannot even order a general mobilization.
You watch Russian TV or read the Russian.
Let's talk about this for a second.
Yeah, from a communication perspective, Putin did lose the war from the start because he made it a personal war, not a justificable. There was no justification for the war except his own will. He imposed it upon his own ministers. It was very violent, very personal. So he lost ground from the start. And what we see now is Zelensky is the greatest communicator also, like the Queen, maybe. And is the first international political leader that we have, except, again, maybe from Elizabeth II, because he knows how to talk to any audience in any country. He talked to all the parliament members worldwide. He's doing it all the time. He's calling Macron Emmanuel, using his first name like it would be his buddy, his chum. It's not the case, but he knows how to manipulate public opinions in all these countries. And Putin did lose that, and now he has huge losses on the field. And I'm sorry, but he doesn't know how to communicate except with
He doesn't
threats,
need to communicate.
With more threats.
You know,
All right, let me ask you about this. Hold on.
Yeah, threatening is not doing.
Right. We first of all, let's call up a map here because the independent monitors are seeing evidence of yet more Ukrainian gains in the past 24 hours. Not just in the northeast, where there was that surprise counterattack from 10 days ago, but also in Donetsk and in the south. Then there's this public claim by Kyiv of at least 440 freshly dug graves at a far cemetery in Izium. Too soon to say if it's a repeat of the evidence of summary executions found in a retaken suburbs of the capital. One journalist from AFP, though, reporting at least one body that had hands tied behind their back. Our correspondent Gulliver Cragg, who saw another with what appeared to be something like a rope around their neck. But again, this is early days. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. At what point, Catherine Field, again, I go back to this summit in Uzbekistan. Yes, Vladimir Putin has the money. He can continue his war. But how tenable can it be to continue doing business with him?
Well, no one's doing much business with him. When you look at, he keeps talking, Vladimir Putin, about opening up to China, having more commerce.
He's selling oil at a discounted rate.
He wants to send more gas. But of course, you don't see running around Moscow at the moment lots of Chinese businessmen. They're not rushing in there. They are staying away because they don't want to be part of any sort of second sanctions. They're staying away. How long can he sustain it for? Well, Craig, he's got a point. I think he can see it through the winter. He will just get bogged down and will end up like it is in Georgia. It will be a frozen conflict right through the winter, and people will be talking about it. Economically, how long can it last within Russia?
well, that's the question.
Yeah.
And what is the answer to that hinge on? It hinges on his population turning against him. We in the West, our leaders do care about the population. Putin doesn't give a tinker's damn.
Yeah, but you look at the 18 officials around, the local officials who signed that letter earlier this week. It's just a drop in the ocean, but every little bit for a man who prides himself on being the leader of the great Russian Empire. He doesn't like it.
They have arrested close to 17,000 people. And that's at a rate of approximately 88.8 naysayers a day.
But there is a communication war going on. Let's take a look here, because there's Russia, first of all, accused of responding with deliberate civilian hits on infrastructure, the electric grid hit in Kharkiv, a dam targeted in President Zelensky's hometown of Kryvyi Rih, that's in the center of Ukraine. Propagandists on Russian state television, they're urging a no more Mr. Nice Guy approach.
If we launch a war on NATO, we must fight in a hard way, and not as we have done so far against Ukraine, with gentleness and care, protecting the civilian population. For 6 months, we have acted unrestrained. Now, it's either them or us.
Them or us, Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet. Now, there was a period where they realized on Russian television that they had to ease off on some of these shows and put back entertainment because it was getting to be a little bit too much doom and gloom. Now, though, when you hear that speaks to what Craig was talking about earlier, which is Operation Carpet Bomb Ukraine, it sounds like.
Some of the commentators do say that. Some other commentators are starting to say, and that's very new, that the war may not be won. That's the first time we heard that last week on TV, national TV, on Russian television. So it's mixed. You have extremists that want to please the Kremlin, and they will ask for more and more violent actions. And that's part of the storytelling that the Kremlin has, to have, a threat that would be hidden. It's very much like the Germans during World War II. There is always the secret weapon that will be, used, and that will, allow us to carpet bomb the other country. And some of other people are saying on TV that, maybe we should be more reasonable.
And also, to carpet bomb, you need a functioning army again. And there was a very strong signal in a video of that Wagner guy recruiting convicts. That shows there are no recruits anymore.
You don't need a functioning army to turn a country into a swamp and a parking lot if they're talking on Russian TV. You're talking about the ghoulish, rampant destruction of cities, civilian targets, men, women, and children.
But is that, Craig Capitas, is that the limits of I don't care? Can Vladimir Putin do that? Because he is hesitating about that.
Well, has he been doing it so far? Yes, he has. Yes, he has. The man is a butcher.
I mean, look at Butcher. He never respected any rules. So why should that change?
It's not good.
He has never been Mr. Nice Guy. That's a joke. I mean, there are rapes on the field. There are killings of civilians.
Well, here we're talking about carpet bombing. Here we're talking about carpet bombing
They
from
just
high
carpet
altitude.
bombed a dam.
He has been terrorizing the Ukrainian population from the start. And that's a message he also sent us. Look what I'm capable of. All the while saying that he would be moderate, but he never acted moderate.
And then again, they got so many weapons and modern weapons that I think there's definitely progress, and that also means that more weapons will come because the support of the Western states will grow when they see that there's
5,000
a
meters,
difference.
Ulrike, 5,000 meters. You give me an American weapon that goes above it, I'll side with it.
The reality
They're
is
not.
that Putin may be losing the war. I mean, it's possible.
All right, with Russia on the back foot, in any case, the European Commission president, we saw her sporting Ukrainian yellow and blue, first in Wednesday's State of the EU speech, where Ursula von der Leyen was flanked by Ukraine's First Lady. These images from Strasbourg. And then on Thursday, when she went to visit her husband, Ursula von der Leyen, in Kyiv alongside Volodymyr Zelensky.
We will never be able to match the sacrifice that the Ukrainians are giving when they lose their homes or they cry for their beloved ones that have gone. We will never be able to compensate what you do with your fight for democracy, but what we can tell you that you have your European friends by your side as long as it takes, and that we are friends forever.
As long as it takes, and we're friends forever, Catherine Field.
Yeah, Europe's in there for the long run. It really is. It feels that there is a lot of unfinished business, not from the end of the Cold War, but from the end of the Second World War. And I think this is what we're seeing. A lot of what was decided in Yalta and Tehran at the end of the Second World War is now playing out. And we're not just seeing it in Ukraine, we're seeing it also in Central Asia as well, all these various spheres of influences. And Europe realizes, with or without Hungary, that it does have to stand up and that this is something that's worth standing up for.
And this Friday we heard, for I think the fourth or fifth time, the German Chancellor saying it was a 180-degree turn for his military. They're all in this time.
Talking about communication. Scholz, unfortunately, one of the worst communicators around.
Come on, they are worse.
And actually, we heard figures that Germany is actually sending more weapons to Ukraine than France, but they are constantly being criticized for not sending enough, whereas France, nothing. Because they don't communicate.
Because the Ukrainians did expect more from Germany than from France.
Because
we
they're
are
just
the least
very
expectation.
They're bad communicators. In the beginning, they said, we can actually send 1,000 helmets. That was a first. And then they just made themselves ridiculous, which is a shame.
That's true. You can't compete with us on the field of saying things but not doing them. I mean, we are the best ones at that.
I'm sure they sent 1,000 helmets, but they sent more.
All right.
Just one thing to be precise. I mean, yellow and blue are also the colors of the European Union.
It is indeed. Will that European unity, though, last? We have winter coming up, not just for Ukraine, skyrocketing home heating bills here. And then there's the rise of the far right in points both north and south. A neo-Nazi-rooted party was the big winner of last Sunday's general elections.
At the moment, we are Sweden's second biggest party. Our ambition is to be part of the government.
Now, so far, Jimmy Åkesson's Sweden Democrats are saying they're going to stay out of government, but they'll be in any case playing the role of kingmaker. Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, your reaction to what's happening in Sweden, and you heard Catherine Field mention Hungary, but this unity that we saw on Wednesday in Strasbourg in the Parliament when there was that speech, is that just a brief, fleeting moment in time now?
No, that's something we have to hope for, but that's not the political reality on the continent. In France, if you look at our current politics, we see that the far right is really the kingmaker. I mean, in our legislation nowadays, if the government wants to pass a law, he has to go through the agreement of the Rassemblement National, the agreement of the far right.
So far, there is national unity here against Vladimir Putin.
Yes, that's because we didn't enter the core of the sacrifices we are supposed to be making. That's why. But once the French if the French make the connection between the sacrifices that they will have to make during winter, and the government has been heavy on that, and the situation in Ukraine, it may change. I mean, the populist stance of the pro-Russian guys, who are also the anti-vax guys, who are also the far-right guys, this lobby has a strong influence. You never know how it could shift in the next weeks.
Catherine Field, the elections in Sweden, I know that a lot of the reasons why you had this surge in the far right's show had to do with domestic issues, crime, blaming it on immigrants. But what does it mean, again, when it comes to that unity we were talking about when we were watching those images of the European Commission president?
Yeah, it's a difficult one because you've not only got Sweden that's had the populist far right, you've also got it in Norway, you've also got it in Denmark. And this is a real problem for, particularly as we're coming into winter and there's going to be inflation. People are going to start not finding things on the shelves they used to and not being able to afford some of the things on the shelves. So there is going to be an issue, and we've got also coming up, don't forget, the Italian elections where we're going to have possibly the far right doing very well. So I think Europe can hold together because you do have some very strong figures in there. Emmanuel Macron, you've got the Spanish Prime Minister, you have some strong figures. And also don't forget, we've got coming up in Prague, you've got this new kind of enlarged political sort of offshoot of the European Union. I think it'll be okay, but they'll be a little bit wary of just how far these political parties have become not just sort of there, but mainstream.
Yeah, you talk about Italy. It's the home stretch of the general election campaign there. They're going to be voting on September the 25th, and it's a party whose roots are pro-Mussolini that's set to get the most votes, according to one opinion poll, while Giorgia Meloni's Brothers of Italy party is on the record as squarely with Ukraine and against Russia. The same cannot be said for her two potential coalition partners, Matteo Salvini of the League and Silvio Berlusconi, yes, he's still here, of Forza Italia. Sweden is one thing, Ulrika Kolterman, Italy is another.
And France is the next. I mean,
thank you.
We don't have an election for a while here right now.
Could be a little European unity here, guys.
Yeah, we see the European unity.
It's not such a big surprise. I mean, these parties were just growing and growing and getting normalized, like the French way, dédiabolisation, trying to pretend they are mainstream. And I think in Sweden, it's obvious that the Social Democrats have their responsibility by always trying to avoid them, and that goes so far that they don't even talk about immigration at all, and they leave them the field. So this is very dangerous. I think the mainstream parties have to tackle these issues. Otherwise, these far-right parties will just grow even more.
Now, we've had the Italian Prime Minister come out and say that the U.S. has told him that there is no evidence that Italy's on a list of some 24 countries where political parties have been receiving through money from a $300 million Russian slush fund, basically to support parties that are more aligned with Putin. That's what was said by Mario Draghi. Your thoughts, though, when you look ahead to that Italian election, Greg Capidis?
Many years ago in 1971, I had a professor by the name of Stanley Plumley who said, read books and write down little things from the books that can inspire you in times like this. You've all parsed this very well, and you bring a good question. I'm going to read what Stanley Plumley had me write down in 71 and has been in my wallet since that, going through many iterations, and leave it at that. It's a quote from Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway, which was a novel about the Spanish Civil War, a war against fascism. Woo! There are many who do not know they are fascists, but will find out when the time comes. That time is now. And I'll leave it at that.
Is it, though, when you have, again, all of Europe, and these are populist politicians who know what it takes to win votes, is it, though, when they see a sovereign state being invaded by another?
All I know is that all the individuals we've just mentioned, where I come from, we call them fascists. And I'll leave someone else to answer your question.
Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, is it... The war in Ukraine, people say, we keep predicting that there's going to be this war fatigue and that people are going to say, cut Vladimir Putin a break. Hasn't happened yet, though.
No, because the Zelensky has put on quite a show, and he knows how to, develop good storytelling. And this is the only story that is winning for the moment, Zelensky's.
Where is it winning, Philippe? Tell me. He's winning the television war.
It's
yes. Winning the television
but that's
war.
Important.
It's also gaining ground.
That's important, because the guys who watch television in France and in many countries, they are the ones who vote, increasingly.
How many divisions does France have?
Yeah, I don't know, but on television, Zelensky has more divisions than Putin, in the Western developed countries at least, and that's explaining a lot, I think. The only story that we have is an aggression. It's a story of an aggression. And, and the guy who is attacked is very nice, and his wife is very nice, and he's always wearing the same simple T-shirt. It's like Gandhi or... I don't know, Greta Thunberg, and is someone that you can hate, but obviously you have to respect him. Putin didn't do that. He's not talking to us. So at one point, he's lost this battle.
I think you're right. Do you remember, Philippe, right at the start of the war in Ukraine, when Zelensky went out into the street at night, with he did a selfie with his, this is the cabinet minister, this is
and
this,
we're here.
And we're here. And I think that must have won so many hearts.
Yeah, because he was offered an escape. He was offered a way out, and he did say, no, I will stay there.
And we're all here.
Again, that's like the Queen Elizabeth II. I mean, we need politicians who are willing to sacrifice themselves for a greater cause.
They can win if we have their hearts and minds. If Zelensky can have their hearts and minds.
If Putin does understand how to get back the hearts and minds of
that was the phrase in Vietnam. It was if we have their hearts and minds, I won't use the word on television, their testicles will follow. Said by an American general. It didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
Hearts and minds is a very good thing, but SAM, Patriot missile batteries, A-10 Warthog.
Well, certainly those HIMAR missile systems seems to be
500 meter ceiling. This is what the generals talk about. Chuckle, if you will, and be romantic about Zelensky, who we all support. But the fact is, you're looking at a technology.
Even if the Russians do wipe out Ukraine, the consequences of it would be a global war. There is no escape from it. So
that's the fear.
Yeah, if he wants to enter a global war.
But Philippe,
yeah, but he couldn't enter that without allies. And currently, everyone, including his allies, are telling him, stop that.
No, Philippe,
And the
absolutely right.
soldiers are running away. I mean, look at this. Look at the situation on the ground. It's not for nothing that the Ukrainians find lots of tanks and ammunition. The Russians are just fleeing,
absolutely,
just leaving it behind. If you don't have a motivated
soldier, let me ask you the next question.
Let's say, how can don't?
Now look at
Putin's not going to go away. So let's say that he does go away. Okay, God, we hope, right? How can anyone in the West ever do business with this man again? Answer me that question.
Oh, he's a successor.
It will be welcome in one country or another. Look at Mobutu. Mobutu did fall. It fell apart when he didn't have any money to distribute. The luck that Putin has, and I agree with you, is that he has a lot of money and he can distribute the money to his...
So you're saying a regime change is necessary in Russia for this thing to...
I think at some point people will either go to war and be dead, kill everyone and go into a global war with him because he will be generous enough with them to do that, or they will get rid of him because eventually they will be tired of him. That's what happened to Mobutu. The economy was so disrupted under Mobutu that it was not sustainable anymore. I mean,
there's never been a revolution in Russia that's been successful without the backing of the military.
Yeah, that's maybe so, but the military they don't want to go to war.
We'll see what happens if there's a general mobilization. Craig Capis was quoting 1971. Let's go back to 1960. The times that they were changing.
Bob Dylan.
La tendresse, l'aventure, le mensonge, l'amour.
Jean-Luc Godard's irreverent, rule-breaking gangster movie Breathless became the breakout film for French New Wave cinema, and the film's two stars, Jean-Paul Belmondo and Jean Seberg, the Franco-Swiss director, passing away this week at 91. His long career included plenty of highs and lows, innovative and daring filmmaking, a dogmatic Maoist phase, and experiments that pushed the boundaries of the seventh art.
Film qui a été fait entre réactions contre tout ce qui ne se faisait pas.
It's a film that was made as a reaction against everything that wasn't a done thing, almost systematically.
Systématiquement, on ne fait pas un gros plan avec un.
You don't do a close-up with a wide lens. Well, then let's do it. And for me, this corresponded with a desire to show that everything was allowed.
De montrer que tout était permis.
You know, we began the show, Ulrike Kolterman, talking about a figure who represented continuity over 7 decades. Here, it's a figure that represented disruption and trying to break things.
It's the eternal rebel, and what I really like about him and about the story is that he was a rebel until the very last end because he died by assisted suicide. So he was so self-determined. He always decided for himself until the end. Even the moment he wanted to die, he died. So I think he was just until the very end. Godard.
Philippe Moreau-Chevalier, this is a guy who broke rules when it came to filmmaking, had denounced the war in Algeria, took on these causes, but also made TV commercials.
At the end, yes. In the end, yes, he did that. He was part of this wave of filmmakers, the new wave, so la nouvelle vague, as we call it, that started with being film critics. They were, first of all, film critics. So they had many critics against the old school, the French old school. They did want to change that. So he started to film in the street, to record the sounds in the streets, and it was very, very new for the time. And then he began to be really abstract. At the end of his career, I mean, if you look Godard par Godard, GLG by GLG, it's an abstract painting in motion. So it's in the end he was doing commercials also to pay his taxes, although he was living in Switzerland, unfortunately for us. And, it should be mentioned. It's been criticized recently by a main French actor, Gérard Darmon, because he had some critics against Israel that were not at all acceptable from from political perspective. He was really
he was fiercely anti-Zionist,
he was on the verge of being more than anti-Zionist, and that has been criticized justly, I think.
Masha Meril, who was the star of Godard's 1964 classic A Married Woman, among those paying tribute.
Godard is a genius. What is a genius? It is someone who does something that has never been done before and forces everyone else to change their way of thinking and doing. It's like Picasso. Geniuses are people who change the way people think.
Catherine Field.
Oh, she's quite right. That was what he did. He took something that had never been done before and did it better than anyone could ever think. He was a genius. He introduced the famous jump cuts into movies that are now, regular sort of way of filming. And there's that famous line that he said was, a story should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but not necessarily in that order, which is absolutely wonderful.
Which is like any conversation.
Yeah.
It's like the world this week.
It's like the world this week, except it can be hard to follow for the viewer.
That's true.
And who can forget that? What is it? 23-minute scene in Breathless in the hotel room.
It was breathless.
It was breathless. It was perfect cinema. They didn't go anywhere. They just sat there, they chatted, and it was perfect.
In 1964, an American Hollywood film producer thought, I want this revolutionary guy to make a movie for me. His name was Joe Levine, so Godard did. And it was Contempt, and he made fun of an American film producer played by Jack Palance.
Wonderful.
Joe Levine was furious, apparently.
Yeah, but it was a wonderful pimp on Godard's part. My wife used to be one of his film editors, and I asked her, in his later films, and I said, tell me the one thing he did that was different. None of this philosophical stuff. Tell me something. And she said exactly what you said. He was the first one to successfully take the camera outside of the studio and put it on the street and whatever. Yeah. At which point I said, if it wasn't for Godard, then we would have never seen the greatest French film ever made, Les Visiteurs. At which point she threw a dish at me.
She's right.
But then again, at the end, he became more and more enigmatic, and he got all these prizes, and he never went to pick them up. And I remember that in Cannes, at the press conference he gave on a mobile phone because he didn't want to come, and then he was just smoking his cigar, and you saw nothing on the screen, only cigar and smoke, and journalists, all these film journalists were super excited to ask him questions, and all of his answers, I remember I didn't understand a word. So at the end it was
another wonderful
very,
character
very
gone. An original, Go see his movie.
You make it sound like Bob Dylan.
Yes.
That's the same generation, and smoking. Yeah. And he was also famous for saying that, cinema was fantastic because you met a pretty girl, 30 minutes later she was naked in front of you. So that's a whole generation, different generation.
A different
that wouldn't work now.
A different generation indeed. We're going to have to leave it there, unfortunately. Much more to say. Philippe Moreau-Chevrolet, I want to thank you. I want to thank Ulrika Kolterman, Craig Kopidis, Catherine Field. Thank you for being with us here in The World This Week.